Welcome to Storytime Fun, boys and girls. We hope you enjoy. Today's story is out of the Classic Fairy Tales book from Hans Christian Andersen and the Brothers Grimm, retold by Nicola Baxter. And today's story is called Thumbelina. Sometimes wishes do come true. There was once a woman who longed above everything else to have a little girl of her own. She went to a wise old woman to ask for advice. "I want so much to have a little tiny girl to care for," she told the old woman. "That is easy, my dear," said the old woman. "Take this barley seed and plant it in a pot. It is no ordinary seed, as you will see." So the woman went home and planted the seed. Almost at once, a green shoot appeared. It quickly grew into a strong plant with one large bud. When the bud opened, there was a beautiful red and yellow flower, a little like a tulip. The astonished woman bent and kissed the lovely petals. And at that very moment, the flower opened. In the middle sat a little tiny girl, perfect in every way. Because she was no bigger than the woman's thumb, she was called Thumbelina. There never was a little girl who was so loved so much, or cared for so well. She had a walnut shell for a cradle and rose leaves for a blanket, while violet flowers made a pretty pillow for her head. As her mother worked around the house during the day, Thumbelina played on the table. She had a shallow dish of water with a lily leaf in the middle, and she loved to row herself back and forth in the sunlight from the open window. As she rowed, she sang so sweetly that even the birds outside stopped to listen to her. So Thumbelina was happy until one night a mother toad hopped through the window and saw the tiny girl in her pretty bed. "She would make a beautiful wife for my son," thought the toad, and she picked up the sleeping girl and carried her back to the river bank. So that Thumbelina could not escape, the toad put her on a lily leaf in the middle of the river. The little girl was not frightened, for she remembered her days playing on the table. But she did want to go home, and she did not want to marry the toad's son. When the toad hopped away to make a house for her son in the reeds, Thumbelina sat on her leaf and sobbed. A little fish heard her crying and popped up his head. "You cannot marry that ugly old toad," he said, and he bit through the stem of the lily leaf so that it went floating down the river. Thumbelina felt happier now. She passed many beautiful places, and a butterfly flew down to visit her. But Thumbelina's troubles were not over. A large black beetle seized her and carried her up into a tree. The beetle thought she was pretty, but when his friends came by, they laughed. "She is so ugly," they said. "She only has 2 legs. Look!" The beetle carried Thumbelina down to a flowery meadow and left her there. He could not bear to hear his friends laugh at him. And so Thumbelina passed the summer quite happily, drinking nectar from the flowers and playing with her friends. the butterflies. But gradually, the days began to grow shorter. Winter was coming, and the nights were cold. Thumbelina knew that she could not survive the winter without a home to live in. As the first flake of snow began to fall, she wrapped herself in a dry leaf and set off to find shelter. Just as the shivering girl began to lose hope, she met a busy little mouse. "You can stay with me in my little house," said the mouse kindly. Thumbelina was happy in the snug little home until the mouse's friend came to visit. He was a mole who lived underground, and he soon fell in love with Thumbelina and wanted to marry her. "You're lucky," said the mouse. "The mole is rich. You'll never want for anything." One day, the mole took Thumbelina to see his underground home. As they walked along a dark passageway, the mole warned her, "Be careful here. Something has died and is lying in the way." Thumbelina knelt down. She felt that it was a beautiful bird, and his heart was still feebly beating. Thumbelina took care of the bird, and by spring it was ready to fly away to join its friends. Thumbelina watched it fly away and wished that she too could escape. She knew that when winter came again, she would have to marry the mole and live underground for the rest of her life. Summer passed again, and autumn leaves were rustling around her feet as Thumbelina stood and looked at the blue sky for the last time. She felt a terrible sadness pressing down on her. Just then, a voice from above called to her. "Come with me, I'm flying to a warmer country for the winter. You will love it there." It was the bird she had rescued almost a year before. In no time at all, Thumbelina was sitting on the bird's back, soaring over fields and cities. The bird flew over mountains, lakes, and the stormy sea, and at last he came to rest in a warm, sunny country where orange trees grew and the air was full of the scent of beautiful flowers. The swallow set Thumbelina down on a leaf among the flowers. You can imagine how surprised she was to see a little man, no bigger than herself, sitting among the petals. "Welcome to my country," he said. "I am the prince of all the flower people. We are so happy to see you. We will call you Maya." So the little girl was happy at last. She fell in love with the prince and married him, and her lovely voice was often heard singing sweetly in the scented air. Well, that's it for today. We'll see you next time.